Hello everyone, and today I am going to be teaching you how to make a super cool botanically dyed shirt and how to identify the plants that we're going to be using for this. So today we're taking a look behind me. There are pokeweed plants and we will be using the poke berries to create our dye. So let's figure out how to identify these plants behind me to make sure that what you're using is the right plant. Here we have our pokeweed, and this plant has this beautiful fuchsia colored stem, so you can see all along the entire plant here. But they actually start out kind of green in color, and as they mature throughout the season will get pinker and pinker. They have these clusters of berries here that are also fuchsia colored. And the little berries start out a whitish green and then change over time to be this deep, deep purpley black kind of color, almost like a blueberry. Here you can see what a young cluster of berries looks like. The pokeweed has these vibrant green, very complete whole margins here along the edge. They're not toothed, they're not serrated, and they're these elliptical shape, round at the edge that connects to the stem, and then it tapers into this point. While they can be a green color, they can also become mottled and get more of that fuchsia color in the leaves as well. As you can see here, creates this vibrant pink color when squished. Beep. Super, super pink. And that will be what we want to use for the dye. So now that we know what this plant looks like, let's go to creating our dye. So you want to pick a bunch of these berries. For every shirt that you're going to dye, you are going to want about a cup of berries. You'll see when you harvest from this plant, it leaves behind almost little tiny pink flower looking objects along the stem. Or at least things that look like a drawing of a flower. Sometimes if the berries are overripe, they can squish in your hands, as you see here. Don't worry if it gets on your fingers, that's totally okay. You can wash them off with soap and water. I've got my cup here and I have some messy hands, but that's totally okay. Now that I have my cup of berries, I can smoosh these. I'll smoosh them and then I'm gonna add them to a 5-gallon bucket of just a bit of water, enough to fully cover the smushed berries and the cloth that I'm going to be using. And I'm going to make sure that I pre-mordant my fabric with alum and vinegar. Vinegar is going to help change the pH a little bit, and the alum is going to help to set the color and be a fixative. Whoa, look at the color change. I'm going to get all that out. Swish it around. Swish, swish, swish. Get that good color out. Isn't that just gorgeous? And now we want to make sure that all the berries are crushed. Wow, this dye is pretty. Then add your shirt. All right, I've added my shirt. It has been pre-mordanted. I'm going to make sure that it is fully in the dye. And now I'm going to let this sit here for hours upon hours upon hours. I want it to sit for as long as possible so that the dye can really get in there. Just remember to stir every once in a while so that one side doesn't get darker than the other. One of the important factors to remember, especially with plants like pokeweed, is that your container that you put your dye in should not be any sort of container that you eat food out of. So if you're going to be using a dye pot, make sure that the pot is a different pot than what you boil food in. Pokeweed is actually pretty toxic, and even though you can use it medicinally, there's a huge huge, long process that goes into making it medicinal grade. And just the berries by themselves are definitely toxic. So you don't want to use this container for anything food. But for dye, it's totally fine. Those berries, they look delicious. They look absolutely wonderful. And birds love them. This is a wonderful, wonderful food plant for native bird populations. So having it around is definitely a wonderful thing to do. In fact, here in Pennsylvania, this is a native plant species and definitely provides valuable habitat for local wildlife. But don't eat it. This is for dye pots and for wildlife, not for eating. All right, so now it is about 5 hours after I originally started the dye bath. Maybe more like 5.5 or so. But I'm gonna take a look. And we've got some really, really cool color. Now keep in mind, when you have a shirt fresh out of a dye bath like this, it's going to look a lot darker than it's actually going to come out. Because if you ever think of, you know, right after you take a shower or when you're washing your clothes, wet things are just darker in general. So when you do your final rinse and then you hang this up to dry and to cure, just keep in mind it is going to come out paler than you would expect. Now I like to leave, as you can see, the berries and the plant matter in, because as they sit on, you can see that they'll leave some cool speckling. And I like that speckling because to me that really feels like, okay, this wasn't just done at a factory, mass produced. This is really plant-based with natural variations in it. So I kind of like to leave that there. But all you're going to do once you finish dyeing is rinse it all off, and then you're going to want to line dry these, as heat from your dryer can damage the plant pigments. After that, you're good to go. Just know all plant pigments do fade over time, hopefully a long time if you've done everything you can with the mordants and, you know, avoiding heat. But just keep that in mind and you will have wonderful, wonderful, vibrant, hand-created, all-natural, sustainable fashion for years and years to come. Are you interested in more botanical dye or foraging or plant goodness? You can subscribe here to stay tuned for all of the wonderful things that come out of the art of ecology and never miss out again on the next botanical dye or foraging video.